Hi everyone, welcome back to the Audit and Attestation class, Chapter 4, Perform Further Procedure and Obtain Evidence. In this session, we'll be understanding in detail about sufficient appropriate evidence. In this, we'll be understanding two subtopics, understanding of the sufficient appropriate evidence and assessing the risk of material misstatement for the same. So let's dive into for more details.
What is sufficient? An evidence is considered, an audit evidence are considered to be sufficient, but when they are in good numbers of sample you have selected for the testing. An evidence is considered as an appropriate when you receive the quality of the evidence required to support those number of samples which you have identified for your testing purpose. As we all know, audit we perform the sample testing. We do not perform the 100% testing, right? So these the number of the sample should be appropriate to give us sufficient coverage on the respective account balance, and the evidence which we are obtaining are of qualitative factor for testing those respective financial statement line item. So both the things are very much important in context of audit, that evidence should be sufficient and appropriate both. If the evidence are sufficient but not appropriate, will that suffice or will that meet the objective of audit?
No, sir.
Why?
So because it doesn't matter even if we test 50 samples, if they are not substantiating our opinion or our assessment, then it is of no use, right?
Yeah. For example, if you are testing account receivable balance and you have selected 50 customer and you want to send them a confirmation, right? And you have sent the confirmation. So you selected 50 sample, that is sufficient, right? Number of sample and the value they are giving the coverage, that is sufficient. But customer are not responding to your confirmation. Then do you have appropriate evidence?
Okay.
The answer will be yes or no?
No, sir.
No.
Rahul, Kashish, are you guys with me?
Yes, sir. No.
Right. So that is called appropriateness of evidence. If you receive the direct confirmation, then evidence are more appropriate. So we'll be discussing more reliable evidence as well. First one, if you see, audit evidence is all the information used by the auditor in arriving at the conclusion on which the audit opinion is based, right? So audit evidence is actually give an auditor the basis of forming their opinion on the respective financial statements or the review of financial statement or attestation of respective engagement, right? First thing is sufficiency of the audit evidence is measured by the quantity. That is how much number of sample you have selected and how much in terms of value they are giving you comfort. So first and foremost important thing is the key value item that as a sample we select to give the sufficiency and appropriateness of the audit evidence. For example, supporting of the number of sample requested, client allow inquiry with the employees and their external lawyers, etc. They all comes in the sufficiency of the audit evidence. Appropriateness of audit evidence is measured with the quality of audit evidence, right? That is its relevance and reliability in providing the support for conclusion on which the auditor opinion is being based, right? So what is sufficiency and what is you can say reliability of the evidence, reliable evidence? Appropriateness, sorry, my bad, appropriateness. Sufficiency means number of.
Sufficiency is related to quantity and appropriate is related to quality, basically.
Quality, yes, right. So example of more reliable evidence. So you know there are a lot of multiple choice question in this chapter. You will be seeing are very confusing. This is the area, to be very honest, you need more and more practice, because most of the things here, when you see in exams or when you practice the multiple choice question, you will definitely see at least 2 out of the 4 answer are right answer. But here important thing is selecting the best right answer. So answer might be right? What you need to learn is how to select the best right answer. So that will be confusing here in this chapter specifically, right? When you do some practice question, you get to know, yes, what I'm saying is making sense now. Like after this class, when you are investing some time in doing the practice from your software, you will see like a lot of things looks perfectly right. But more important thing is to know which one is more right, which one is more better, which one you use first, right? So here are the example for more reliable evidence. So evidence, all evidence are generally reliable, but you need to understand the sequence of the reliability, right? First one is the independent source, that is outside of the entity. So most reliable audit evidence are those evidence which comes from the third party, like the confirmation from bank, confirmation from receiver, right? Confirmation from the lawyer. Those things are generally considered as a more reliable audit evidence, because it is coming out directly from the third party. Make sense? Second is obtained directly by the auditor. So few evidence directly obtained by the auditor. If you see the confirmation procedure, we ask third party to directly submit to us, not to the client, right? Inventory count, you directly observe the inventory count, right? Processing of transaction. So as an IT auditor, you might be observing the processing of transaction. Cash count, you might be observing the cash count. So the things which you are doing at your own are being considered also as a most reliable source, but after the independent confirmation or independent sources. Third is documentary evidence are more reliable than verbal. If you have purchase order, if you have sales order, if you have agreement, right? If you have communication over the email, those things are more reliable than those things which are verbally communicated. Make sense? Any doubt here so far?
No, sir.
Fourth is original documents are more reliable than photocopies or e-document, right? I know nowadays we consider e-document also, but if you see more weightage from the auditor standpoint of view is being given still to those hard copy original document, which is like, for example, minutes of a meeting, purchase order from the customer, right? Or you can say agreement with the vendor. Those all things are generally given more, you can say, reliable evidence, are being considered as a more reliable evidence. Next is internally generated evidence when related controls are effective. So you will be relying on the internally generated evidence only when the controls are operating effectively. If the controls are not operating effectively, try to corroborate as much as possible from outside party or third party or from your independent source, right? Make sense?
Yes, sir.
For example, you are testing the value of investment on 31st December 2021, right? So you went to Bloomberg. So your company for which you are doing audit, they have made investment in many listed companies, right? And you went to the Bloomberg on 31st of December and download the list of price for the respective stocks which your company do have. Now, the company accountant has multiplied the number of units with the price available in the Bloomberg and reached the number of reached to the value of investment. Right? In this case, the evidence which you are taking from Bloomberg, which will fall in which category out of this five? Are you getting my point? What is my question?
It could be independent source outside the entity.
independent source outside the entity, right?
Yes, right.
Makes sense. And it is given more weightage as well, right?
Right. Yes.
Right? If, for example, management has done their own calculation on the number of units and they have taken like pricing from Bloomberg and they have done the math and they have shared you that Excel file in which they have like company name, number of unit, price on 31st December and total value, and that is being tied to their journal ledger. So what category of evidence you will consider this?
Could be documentary evidence.
Why documentary? Why not internally generated?
We have obtained it from a particular site while reaching the calculation.
No, you have not obtained. Management has done the mathematical calculation and they have shared the Excel file with you.
It's not directly obtained by the auditor then.
Yes.
Yes.
So where do you consider out of
documentary evidence, sir, because they are taking from the third party and just doing the maths. So they have not placed any controls. So internal generated evidence, when rated, controls are effective, which means when there are some ITC controls in place.
Yeah, it's like falling in more than one category, I feel. Because
yeah, documentary and internally generated both.
yes, right.
Right. For example, company has done the calculation of depreciation on an Excel sheet and they have given that Excel sheet to you for the validation for as a testing process. So in which category out of these five it will fall?
Sir, again, those two categories, documentary evidence and internally generated evidence.
No, this is purely internally generated. Why earlier was documentary evidence? Because in that they were given you screenshot of the Bloomberg as well from where they have taken. But here it is pure mathematical calculation they have done. Right? For example,
what I was interpreting from this third point was that it says is documentary evidence are more reliable than the verbal. So management in the end is providing you a document rather than communicating it verbally. So I put in this category.
No, makes sense. Yes, you're right. So yeah, again, this one is also fall into both, right?
So can you repeat the example? Pardon me.
Which one? Depreciation or investment?
Yeah, so this one only, documentary and internal.
Yeah, Ayush, do you wanna repeat?
Yes, sir. So who asked the question? Kashish?
Sanchit.
So Sanchit, both the examples that sir gave were falling under both the categories. Documentary evidence are more reliable than verbal and internally generated evidence. When sir said that depreciation management is providing a depreciation schedule to the auditors. Okay. So in that case, management has done the calculations and everything, and we will be relying on the same because the controls, if only the controls are effective, because it's an internally generated document, because management has done all the calculations. And my logic to it falling in the third category, that is documentary evidence are more reliable than the verbal, was because management is ultimately providing you a documentary evidence rather than communicating what depreciation should be verbally. So that's why it should fall under both the categories, and that was the example. And the previous example was that there were some reports which were there on this
Bloomberg.
Yes, and in that case also it would fall under both the categories C and E.
Right.
So like if they are providing the evidence or the source document, basically, that's why we are taking it. As
so if things are coming in a documentary way, not only verbal way. For example, you go to the McD's, right? And verbally you communicate, give me a McVeggie meal, right? Or if you are, for example, like issuing a purchase order to, let's say, Haldiram or to any KFC for delivering, let's say, 100 meals for your employee. So which evidence is being more reliable?
I have a question. Ideally, when we talked about the depreciation example, right, we said that it is internally generated evidence. But I mean, if I read that point, it primarily talks about if my internal control systems are effective, then any, let's say, report or any output that is coming out of the system is what we would rely upon, right? Otherwise, we will not.
So it does not say only from system. You know, depreciation, like there might be manual controls or
Manual controls
highly
or
dependent
automatic
manual
factors.
controls around the depreciation calculation.
Okay.
Right? Same like IP.
Right. Okay.
So इसमें फिर we are taking an assumption that controls are effective.
Yes.
Yep.
Otherwise, like those information are useless.
Okay.
Right? Then
But
like
sir, अगर
auditor
कोई
need.
थर्ड पार्टी जैसे क्लाइंट अगर अपना सोर्स डॉक्यूमेंट हमें बता रहा है तो वहां पे उनके चांसेस बढ़ नहीं जाएंगे कि मतलब दे माइट हैव इंटेंट टू डू फ्रॉड और सो अगर वो अपना सोर्स डॉक्यूमेंट देके हमने वहां से लिया है so independence
These all are like available in market. Stock market price are available in market, whether you take from Bloomberg, NASDAQ, anywhere. So those are like public source.
ठीक ठीक अच्छा पब्लिक सोर्स आ रहे हैं तो ठीक बट सर स्टॉक मार्केट के चलो सोर्सेस आ गया बट डेप्रिसिएशन के लिए तो कोई पब्लिक सोर्स नहीं होगा ना
you know, that is their management policy. For that it would be a written policy of the management, like which category of assets they will be depreciating in which how many years.
Straight line value.
Yes, and sir, I think even we would assess, let's say, the useful life is consistent with what you usually see and all of those things, right? So we even do that to make sure that the assumptions and the policies kind of align to the other companies in the industry or otherwise, or if it's specific to them.
Okay.
Right?
And yes, sir. Thank you, Kush. Thank you, Ayush.
Yeah, look at the note. Auditor may consider the relationship between cost of obtaining audit evidence and the usefulness of the information obtained. So all the time, like, you know, as an auditor, you need to keep in mind the budget as well, you know. So you can go for on and on audit like throughout your life, right? It may not end up for every 1 year. Like, so here you need to keep in mind how much time, energy, and money you are investing. Is it worth giving that much evidence? So that is also, as an auditor, you always need to keep in mind how much cost you are investing. Would it giving worth investing that much time, energy, and money? Last thing is, however, the matter of difficulty or expenses involved is not in itself a valid basis for omitting the audit procedure for which there are no appropriate alternative. So here you need to look at the balance approach. You know, you are not supposed to do testing of each and every item. You're not supposed to do all alternative testing. So you need to identify and evaluate the item which are mitigating the respective assertion risk, right? For that, you need to bring as much as efficiency possible, and you can eliminate those area which is not much required or which is duplicating your effort, which is giving you can say support to the same assertion which you have validated through any other alternative source as well. But sometime you will see, like auditor will say, doing that audit procedure might be an expensive affair, so I have not performed that, right? If there is no alternative to mitigate the risk on the respective assertion, then as an auditor, we cannot say that, like that that procedure was a costly affair, hence I have not performed that. So you cannot shed away from your responsibility by saying like it was a costly or difficult affair, hence I have not performed that respective audit procedure. Then it would be considered as a gross negligence on the part of CPA, and it may result into you can say penalties and imprisonment as well from AICPA or PCOB. Make sense? You need to follow a balanced approach in managing the overall audit in most effective and efficient manner. Last topic in it is assessing the risk of material misstatement. This in chapter 2 we have studied in detail. So here I am just quickly walking you through with this topic. Objective to assess the risk of material misstatement is to determine the nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedure to be applied to specific account balance, class of transaction, and disclosure. Right? Why we do risk assessment? To determine the nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedure for the respective class of balance, transaction, and disclosure. Right? Simple. This we have studied in detail in chapter 2. The auditor, for the risk assessment process, what as an auditor we do? We obtain understanding of the entity and its environment, including internal control, to assess the risk of material misstatement. Second, what we do after doing the risk assessment, we plan and perform the test of control to test the operating effectiveness of those control. Plan and perform substantive audit procedure to detect the material misstatement at the assertion level, right? Lastly, auditor can plan the substantive approach or a combined approach. Here you can do dual testing also, right? Or you need to plan the substantive approach as well as combined approach to the account balance, class of transaction, and disclosure. So when you are doing integrated audit, you can choose sample which can be used for the dual purpose, testing of control purpose as well as test of detail purpose. But normally when you choose the sample size for the dual purpose, the number of sample are more than for the single purpose, right? That is something you need to keep in mind, right? So this is like the overview of chapter 4 and the first topic, which is sufficiency and appropriateness of evidence, right? So maybe we can take a break over here. After that, we'll do a bigger topic, which is journal procedure to obtain sufficient and appropriate evidence. So in that, we'll be learning in detail journal audit procedure.